You are listening to the Spacedastic Mysteries podcast. We are beginning Anna Gale Lyne's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. As the walls close in, and with more lives hanging in the balance, Jessa must confront dark secrets from her past that were buried long ago. Betrayals come to light, trust is shattered, and the line between friend and foe blurs as they unravel a conspiracy. With time running out and danger closing in, Jessa and Nate must race against an unseen enemy who will stop at nothing to take down the family legacy. Can they solve the murder before it's too late, or will Jessa's past finally catch up with her in a deadly reckoning? Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is Episode 1, What Do I Remember? If you have not subscribed, do so now, and if you are on YouTube, hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
I'm sorry, Graham. I just can't remember the last few months, I told the bald man who appeared on the screen of my computer terminal. I admired how handsome he looked in his neatly pressed, black Freedom Alliance duty uniform. They somehow made his long, rugged features look less severe. When I spied the 3 stars that adorned his lapel, I wondered, when did he receive a promotion? Freedom Alliance officers who served aboard star vessels, such as me, wore standard-issue black flight overalls when on duty. Those who didn't were issued a different duty uniform consisting of a light blue cotton shirt with 2 cargo pockets and matching pants. I settled into the black, leather chair in my office aboard the SpaceVessel Liberty. I raked my eyes around the room. First over the window seat I sat on when I became frustrated. Then to the couch that I fell asleep on after working all night on a case. Finally my eyes fell upon the door that led to my daughter Regina's classroom. At least, my office looked familiar. Sighing heavily, I said, it's like trying to access classified files without clearance. It started yesterday morning. I found myself standing over the body of a woman I didn't remember meeting. Although from the sympathetic words and looks from my crew, I deduced that I knew her quite well. She lay there in a pool of her own blood. Murdered on my star vessel, and I didn't have a clue who she was, how long she'd served aboard the Liberty, or if she had any family. He put his huge hands that looked as if they had never seen the likes of pulling weeds, planting vegetables, or any other backbreaking, callous-building work on his shoulder. He rubbed the muscles in the back of his neck. A gesture he did when something concerned him. Probably trying to smooth out the kinks caused by biological weapons, presidential assassins, the war between the Freedom Alliance and the Crimson Fleet, and now this, one of his best federal agents with gaps in her memory. Within 2 minutes, he seemed different somehow. More relaxed and at peace. What could change his attitude that fast? Whatever it is, maybe he should bottle it and sell it in every store on Earth and its colonies. He would make trillions. As if settling something in his mind, he leaned forward and asked in a voice as warm and comforting as a fire in the middle of a heavy blizzard, "What is the last thing you remember?" I drew in my bottom lip. I chewed on it a moment, searching my mind for an answer. Any answer would do. I remembered the bright lights of the car coming toward Ben and me. I flew out the window of the minivan. Although every fiber of my body hurt, I managed to look back at our vehicle. I saw Ben slumped over the steering wheel. I recalled the painful process of learning to walk again while grieving for the husband I lost. The elation when I took my first steps again. Oh, and the conversation about coming back to work. Resuming command of the Liberty after the car crash, I replied, glancing around my desk. Something seemed different about it. The color? No, it looked the same as when I saw it last. A different computer terminal maybe? No. Something out of place? No. Where are my pictures of Ben? I noticed the pictures on the right side of my desk. I studied them for a moment. Something seemed odd about them. A formal shot of my Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, a government intelligence agency partner, Nathaniel, Jessa Masters, Regina, and me set in a garden filled the first picture. By the Secret Service personnel and the glimpse of a large familiar White House in the background, I suspected it to be the White House's Rose Garden. What were we doing there? Nate wore a tux. I exerted more energy getting Nate into a tuxedo than I did when I climbed Mount Everest. Reggie and I donned beautiful dresses. I didn't even own a dress, and especially not a white, lacy one like the one in the picture. Reaching across the desk, I picked the framed photo up and stared at it. When did this occur? And why are we at the White House? I never took Reggie on our visits to the president. Could it have been President Juno's birthday? Maybe her wedding? I didn't know. What I did know is that I found the whole picture to be mighty peculiar. From what I gather, I resumed command 6 months ago, I added, turning my eyes back to General Graham. He now sipped a glass of what appeared to be water. Graham didn't drink alcohol, especially not when he worked, so I had no reason to believe he filled his glass with anything other than water. Have you seen Dr. Manning, Peacock? Maybe someone drugged you. He then slammed his glass down on his desk. Yes, yesterday, Graham. He ran a toxicology report, but he still hasn't given me the results. Graham and I had been friends for many years. When he pressed his eyebrows together and licked his lips, as he did now, something worried him. Probably me, my mission, whether I compromised myself as an agent. I knew he wondered if I leaked out federal secrets while under the influence of some drug I ingested. Jaguar should rendezvous with you momentarily, he began, leaning back in his chair, pointing his stylus from his QuanPad, an electronic notepad that held the memory of a full-sized quantum computer, at me. You probably don't remember, but he has been teaching a workshop at the academy for the past few weeks. He looked over at me thoughtfully, folding his arms across his chest. Peacock, I am sure you will be glad to have your husband home again. My husband, Graham? I felt as if my jaw might drop onto the floor. Jag and I let my voice trail off. I couldn't quite grasp that I married my partner. The picture. Nate in the tux. Reggie and I in those dresses. Oh, the picture had to be of our wedding. We held it at the White House. How did we manage that? That's right. Madeline Ashton, or Aunt Maddie as my brothers and I called our godmother, won the United States presidential election. And she appointed Mom as the head of her Secret Service. They remained best friends since kindergarten. But still, when did she find time to host my wedding? I glanced down at my left hand and noticed the gold band on my ring finger. My heart pounded. I felt as if someone had dropped a piano on my chest from above. What have I done? What happened to staying single was the plan. What happened to honoring Ben's memory and raising Reggie on my own? I loved Nate. I had no question about that. I could remember all the nights he spent with me in the weeks following the crash that killed my first husband, Nate's brother, Ben. I had remained confined to my bed, paralyzed. By the time I came back to the Liberty, 6 months after the crash, I knew I had fallen for Nate. No matter how much I fought them, my feelings for him grew stronger with every passing moment. I didn't tell him because I didn't think he felt the same way. Nate's lifestyle didn't scream, I want to settle down, get married and help raise my brother's kid. Instead, he dated and dined a different girl every night of the week, which wasn't conducive to raising an 8-year-old. Lately, though, I noticed some changes in him. He spent more time with his sister, Reggie, and me than with his girlfriends. He seemed more centered, more at peace, more, dare I say, mature. About 3 months ago, Graham supplied, fidgeting with the stylus. I shook my head, picking up the picture to gaze at it again. It's amazing how quickly things can change in 6 short months. I replaced the picture of Nate, Reggie, and me on my desk. If only I remembered. Well, Graham, I will give you the results when they come in. I gave him a weak smile, then ended the transmission. I rose from my chair and walked over to the window a few feet away. As I did, I brushed against the large curtain that concealed the marker board behind my desk. I sat on the window seat and stared out at the stars, pondering everything Graham told me. How could that be true? How could I have missed out on the last 6 months of my life? What if my memories never returned? I didn't remember my wedding. The one to Nate. I didn't even know how he proposed. Nate proposed? That sounded strange. Not that he proposed to me, but that he proposed to anyone at all. Until recently, I didn't even think Nate would ever take that plunge. He loved me. Nate really loved me. What about Reggie? How did she react to Nate and I marrying? I felt a wave of nausea ride my stomach. I couldn't remember Reggie's last birthday, what presents she received, if we had a party, what kind of cake Joey made. But more importantly, I didn't know what happened to that poor woman whose body I found myself standing over yesterday. I shook my head. I have to remember. I just have to, I mumbled to myself. You have to remember what? A familiar voice called out to me from across the room. I looked up into Nate's face. He hadn't changed a bit. He cut his dark hair to the end of his neck. He had a nose that would have appeared large on anyone else, but that seemed at home among his chiseled features. Just as I did, Nate wore the same military-issued black coveralls that made his cappuccino eyes glisten as if they were diamonds setting in the sun. He had been my rock for so long. When my world felt as if it were crashing in on me, like now, I knew he would be my safe haven. I rushed over to him and threw my arms around his neck. Oh Jag, am I glad to see you. He drew me into his arms and whispered, I've missed you so much, Peacock. Nate and I referred to each other by our code names, Jaguar and Peacock. He received his for his cat-like reflexes, whereas I received mine for doing the peacock dance, the act of establishing a relationship with a target of the opposite sex to obtain information, so well. I felt safe in Nate's arms. Maybe everything would be all right after all. With my partner at my side, I could solve any mystery, even the mystery of my missing memory. I'm sure I missed you too, I muttered to myself, resting my head on his shoulder. I stared straight ahead. I should know whether I missed Nate, but I didn't. But none of that mattered right now. Nate just arrived home, and I wanted him to settle in before we started our new assignment. Graham had assigned us to locate the dead woman's killer. She had been an intelligence operative with the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, just as Nate and I were. And that made her death IIB business. Then, of course, there was the matter of finding my memory. Could there be a connection between the woman's murder and my memory loss? I did lose my memory around the same time Dr. Manning said she had died. Pushing the thought away, I asked Nate, how was your workshop? It went well. I think I have a knack for teaching, he replied, running his hand over the back of my head. I'm not surprised. I have you to thank for teaching me to be the best female agent in the IIB. I smiled, remembering the day I met Jessa Masters, seasoned agent. He leaned against the door of his vehicle, an old beat-up Jaguar, how appropriate considering his code name that he was trying to restore. Trying being the appropriate word. Back then, his dark hair reached to his shoulders, and his eyes were cold and lifeless. He didn't like being stuck with me. I knew he was the best, and I told myself that if I could hang in there, he would teach me to be the best too. And he did. Do you remember the first day you were assigned to me? I reminisced, turning my head to look at him. You looked like you'd rather be anywhere but with me, Jag. He cleared his throat, which always indicated that he was about to make a confession. I wasn't assigned to you. I picked you, Peak. He put me at arm's length, gazing into my eyes. General Graham let me study the videotapes of the trainees, Peak. He told me to choose which one I wanted to partner with. And I chose you. If that's true, Jag, then why were you so hard on me? He put his hand to my cheek, stroking it. Because you were clearly the best in your class. You have a rare natural talent for this job, Peak. And an instinct that is rarely ever wrong. I wanted to make sure you applied yourself. He leaned in and brushed his lips against mine. Electricity woke up every fiber of my body. Then he applied a bit more pressure. The one kiss turned into another and then into a series. When we came up for air, as if just thinking of it, he expressed, I heard about Brooklyn. I am so sorry, Peak. I know how close you and her were. When I didn't hear from you last night, I assumed you were working to solve her murder. Brooklyn? Who's Brooklyn? I wondered, staring at him blankly. Oh. He must be referring to the dead woman. This Brooklyn, how well did I know her, Jag? I struggled to keep my voice from quavering. He let out a mocking laugh, chastising, Peak, this is not a time for jokes. I turned my back on him, folding my arms across my chest. I stared out at the stars again, searching for something, anything that could tell me why I couldn't access my memories for the last 6 months. I bit my lip hard to keep from crying. I bit it so hard that I tasted blood. Nate grabbed my shoulders. I felt my body stiffen under his touch. Peak, you're serious, aren't you? His voice rose an octave and bordered on panic. My comlet, a wrist-worn communication device that refused to activate until it verified its user's thumbprint, chimed. I have to take this. It should only take a moment, I explained to Nate, gesturing toward the comlet. I walked away from Nate, to the corner behind my desk. I put my thumb to the center of the comlet and addressed, Colonel Strasser here. Colonel, this is Dr. Manning. From that greeting, I can surmise that your memory has not returned. In any case, I have the results on the toxicology report. I found something intriguing in your blood work, Colonel. The drug CPM-203. The experimental memory erasing drug, I whispered into the comlet. Even in a hushed tone, I suspected Nate heard me. You could fit a small studio apartment into my office with little room left over. Glancing back at him, I knew by the way he stared at me that I had to share my secret with him before he launched a full investigation. You know, spies, intelligent operatives, when they think there is something wrong, it gnaws at them until they put their finger on the problem. How long would you estimate this drug has been in my system, Doctor? Approximately 20 hours, Colonel. And if your memories are not recovered by next Sunday, the memory loss will be permanent. Upon hearing the doctor's prognosis, my breath became raw in my throat. Sickening waves of terror welled up in my stomach. Lieutenant Colonel Stetson was injected with CPM-203 last year, Doctor, I mentioned, furrowing my brow, and the Freedom Alliance had a very hard time locating an antidote. When space travel became reality instead of science fiction, Earth's armed forces joined forces, creating the Freedom Alliance. Each branch functioned on its own as it always had. Only now they came under the rules and regulations set forth by the Freedom Alliance. Now in 2151, 51 years after the establishment of the Freedom Alliance, some members didn't agree with its rules and actions any longer. Instead, they formed their own organization, the Crimson Fleet. The members of the Crimson Fleet wanted to establish a one-world totalitarianism government on Earth and its colonies on other planets. That's how the war with the Crimson Fleet began. I couldn't recall marrying Nate, but I did know why the Liberty sat on the front lines of this war. By that, I summarized that I still focused on work more than my family. Yes, it is challenging but not impossible to locate. However, Colonel, the best solution is to give the brain time to recover the memories on its own. To widen our chances of finding the antidote, I will utilize every contact I have. As will I. Thank you, Doctor. I moved back toward Nate, meeting his chilly gaze. I took a deep breath before starting my explanation. The reason I didn't call you last night is because I didn't know you were away. My memory has a giant hole in it. A 6-month hole. Tapping my comlet, I continued, as you probably heard, Dr. Manning discovered CPM-203 in my system. 6 months, he cried, running his eyes slowly over me from head to toe. Then you don't remember, he continued, pointing to me, then him. He repeated the gesture several times. Maybe he felt if he gesticulated wildly enough, my memory would return. I covered my face with my hands for a few seconds. Graham told me that we are married, but I can't remember our wedding. I inched my hands up to my temples. Rubbing them, I proceeded, I can't recall what happened to my first officer. I don't know if we ever caught the leak who was supposed to be aboard. I didn't recognize the woman who died. I was standing over her body, but I didn't know her. Or falling in love, peak. Nate's face grew dark and pinched, his brows knitted deeply. He looked as if he took a bullet and struggled to keep his balance. I hated when he looked like that. I felt a pang of guilt prick my conscience. He looked like that because of me. If only I had my memories, then he wouldn't look as if I had just told him I cheated on him and demanded a divorce. I closed the gap between us. I slipped my arms around his neck and pressed my chest against his. I leaned my head back to see him better. I definitely remember falling in love with you, Jag. I just didn't know you felt the same way. Peak, I do. I really do. He put his arms around my waist and pressed his lips against mine, his eyes dancing as if they were lightning illuminating a dark sky. Oh, and Peak, you can't go around calling yourself Colonel Strasser. You'll confuse the crew. They just got used to calling you Colonel Masters. For months, they've called you Colonel Masters. I gave him a sidelong glance and questioned, are you playing with me, Jag? I changed my name? That just doesn't sound like me. You said, and I quote, I figure after claiming the Masters as my family for so long, Jag, I ought to take their name. I just want to put an end to the Strasser abuse. I want to close that chapter of my life, he provided, touching his head to mine. I think standing up to your father had a lot to do with it. And with him safely behind bars, Peak, he can't bother us anymore. This is getting too weird. Am I in a parallel universe or something? I declared, letting go of Nate's neck. I sauntered over to the window, and as I walked back, I threw my hands up in resignation. I continued my rant, pacing in front of the window. First I found out you and I are married. That's good. Even a bit amazing. I traveled from one end of the window seat to the other and back again. Then that I changed my name to Masters. All right, Jag, I guess I can buy that. I stopped, turning to face Nate again. But now you're telling me that I stood up to my father, a man who abused me for most of my life? And that he is in prison? I don't know if I can believe that I finally mustered enough courage to. I let my voice trail off. He chuckled and remarked, I guess that is a lot to comprehend. He came over to me and gently turned me toward the doors. Let me take you to lunch in the mess hall, Peak. I'll fill in the gaps for you. I agreed and let him lead me out my office door and into the travel tram and elevator car that traveled up and down as well as side to side.